right now.
Thanks, Eliza. Yeah, and thanks everyone who's here to listen to my presentation in the present moment and in the future. I really appreciate you all for your support. Like Eliza said, I've been serving at the Hopland Research and Extension Center in Hopland, California. For those of you who don't know, that's a 5,300 acre research and extension center that's run by the University of California's Agriculture and Natural Resources Division. It's in inland Mendocino County, and HREG's mission is to maintain and enhance ecosystem integrity through applied research, adaptive management, and educational activities, while also supporting working landscapes, including the diverse agricultural products and ecosystem services derived from those landscapes. And fun fact, since 1951, when HREG was founded, more than 2,000 publications have come from the site in different subjects like animal science, entomology, plant ecology, watershed management. So it's been a really cool place to live and learn and see the most recent of those studies, taking place. I'd love to start my presentation by, here it's loading, thinking about the community we're situated in here. So like I said, we're part of Mendocino County at large, and we contribute to Mendocino County through producing hopefully relevant research for the area. But we're also part of the University of California, which is a really beautiful community. And we're neighbors with the Hopland Band of Pomo Indians, on whose ancestral and unceded territories we live and learn. So it's really cool to have a relationship with them and to have gotten to meet several of the tribe members over there and work with them. We actually have like adjoining property lines, and they come to the site on a regular basis. So they're a really important part of our community here. And we also are a part of the local fiber community in a really significant way. We're a member of the Fibershed cohort for Mendocino County, and we host a lambing school and a shearing school every year. So most people who know fiber in the Mendocino County have maybe heard of HREG. And we also host the Climate Stewards and California Naturalist classes here every year. So we're part of that community too. There's a lot of people who have taken those classes, and if you haven't heard of them or looked into them or taken them yet, you might be interested too. They're really awesome courses that are hosted by the University of California. And we also have the California Conservation Corps on site a lot, and a lot of youth programming too. That's why I put the 4-H clover on there. We have a lot of kids on site, which is what I want to talk about next. To begin talking about all of the different projects I've been doing on site, I want to tell you guys about our youth educational programming. We host kids of all ages at HREC, and that's been a really fun part of my time here, and I spent so much time helping host these field trips. We host kids as young as 3 years old, all the way up to 18. So let's start talking about the lambing programs. Every year, we have about 400 baby lambs born on site, which is as adorable as you can imagine. And we have field trips where the kids get a chance to actually walk over to the barn with us and learn about all the different services that sheep can provide, from fuels management to fiber and food. And then they get to bottle feed the lambs, which is what you're seeing in this picture in the upper left-hand corner. And afterwards, we do some felting crafts. But we engage kids of all ages with the sheep, all the way up to, in the right photograph where you're seeing, we have a high school agriculture class from Santa Rosa who came out. And right now in this photo, they're learning from our shepherd Allison about how she herds the sheep into a chute, which is basically a place where the sheep have to get into single file, and they, check their body condition and give them dewormers and things like that. So the students actually got to help with doing deworming and checking body conditions on that day. It was really cool to be there. I actually had never done that myself either, and I got to kind of participate. There's a lot of other things we do outside the lambing department though too. We do fire science field trips for 6th graders and teach them about how our landscapes adapted to fire and how humans have always lived with fire, to help them feel more prepared for fire season. And we do birding field trips. This year it was mostly 2nd and 3rd graders, and we just go out and learn about bird behavior and things like that. We do bio blitzes where we look under cover boards, we watch scorpions move around, and the blue racers and all kinds of cool critters on the forest floor. And last but certainly not least, we do sustainable use summer camp every year, which actually just ended about a week ago. And that's what you're looking at in the lower left-hand corner. This is a photo of our one of our most dedicated volunteers, Susan, who showed up every day of camp, and she's helping a little girl build a garden box on food day at summer camp. That was so much fun. Yes, would recommend to anyone who has kids in their life to recommend that they look into the summer camp here. It's really awesome. But we also have adult educational programming as well. We host workshops. They're mostly focused on natural resources, agriculture, and climate change, adaptation, and resiliency. That can obviously include a lot of different topics. The workshop that you're looking at in the photo here with Fibershed on the projector screen was a hedgerow workshop where we were thinking about all the different kinds of hedgerows and the different benefits they provide. And that's Rebecca Burgess there, the founder of Fibershed, talking about the dye plants that we have at our hedgerow here at HREC, which we did a natural dye workshop after this, and we all got to kind of experiment with using the natural dyes. And we host volunteer work parties too. So the left-hand photo with this beautiful smiling face is my roommate Katie, who's a fellow GrizzlyCorps member and is here with us today. We did some restoration at our local stag pond, which we're trying to improve the habitat for California red-legged frogs. So we were relocating some spikerush plants that day. Super fun. Let's see. And then I also wanted to mention the climate stewards class again, because this was a really big part of my year this year. From January to March, I helped teach the climate stewards class, which was a really new experience for me because I've only ever taught children, and it was my first time ever delivering lesson plans to adults. So that felt like a really big step forward for me and was really exciting. I got certified to teach the climate stewards class, so hopefully I'll get to do that again in the future. We also host public hikes at the site, which is really, really cool, and you should keep your eyes peeled for that. Lots of reasons to get on HREC's mailing list if you aren't already. So a little break here to show you my spirit animal. This is from a trail camera at the site a couple of years ago. They captured this photo of a bear enjoying the bathtub, which is capturing spring water up on the upper reaches of the property. So I like to remember that at this very moment, there could be a bear relaxing in a bathtub at HREC. Just had to throw that in there before we switch gears. And I want to tell you how much I love GIS and how much I was able to grow as a GIS professional here at HREC. All of these maps on the left-hand side these are map titles from our Field Maps app, which I've helped develop over my time here. There have been so many different projects that have required a mapping component, which I obviously love, as you can see my smiling face holding this very beloved tool, which is a Bad Elf GPS unit that we acquired this year at the site. This makes it possible for us to get really high accuracy data and be able to map things down to like within 1 foot, which is great if you're trying to point someone to something that they need to be able to find that's maybe underground or something like that. So one of my major project capacity goals was helping plan all the infrastructure improvements that need to happen before we bring cattle onto the site. And that's been a goal for the site to bring cattle onto the land for a few years now, and they're getting really close to it being a reality. So this year they're actually building the water infrastructure and thinking about areas that they need to protect from the cattle, like vulnerable riparian areas, sag ponds and vernal pools, and things like that, research experiments and archaeological sites. So I've been kind of having meetings with different advisors, botanists, foresters, and mapping all of their feedback about places that we might want to protect or monitor, and mapping it all so that anyone else who works on site in the future can access that pretty easily. And speaking of infrastructure, we also set up a bunch of infrastructure maps, which has been really cool. It's not my usual wheelhouse because I generally am interested in like ecosystem and restoration planning using GIS, but HREC was founded in 1951 under the university, and they built a lot of infrastructures, you know, like septic tanks, pipelines, water, and then, you know, electrical systems and things that are often underground, but the maps were paper maps at that point. They were often hand drawn or made in AutoCAD, which was like a predecessor to ArcGIS. And so they the current maintenance crew, when they need to find something, often they have to do some exploratory digging and they don't know exactly where it is. And sometimes it takes up a lot of time for them. And so something they identified that they need is more accurate maps about things like that. So basically what I did was set up the framework for them to be able to capture the location of those things as they find them. Like, for example, they had to fix my plumbing and they were out in my yard for a while, just kind of like probing for the septic tank. And then once we found it, we mapped it. And so we really know where it is now. And everyone in the future will know exactly where it is, the GPS location. It's funny because before they used kind of triangulation based on sometimes on trees or fence lines, which since the 1950s have both moved. So that was the case. That was the case for the septic tank. It was like supposed to be 10 feet from some certain tree and so many feet from some certain fence line, which both had moved. So that was interesting to me to kind of learn more about the history of GIS in that way. And let's see, we also have worked a lot on the vegetation treatment plan, which is a prescribed burn plan we're working on with CAL FIRE. So I've just put up a new image for you guys on the screen here. This is our VTP map. And this took a lot of work to figure out specific areas on the site we want to burn and which ones we want to burn first. And we've been working with CAL FIRE throughout the whole year to continue to develop this plan and get the archaeological reviews done and the botanical reviews done. Did some rare plant hunts actually with our botanists and things that were a part of planning the VTP. So that's been a really big part of the year too. And I've also worked a lot on cattle pasture surveys, as you can see. I have a map here about so that future GrizzlyCorps members can take over this project and find the survey sites that I used without having to just kind of drive slowly and look for them, which is what sometimes you have to do. So these are all pictures I took during the species composition survey. But I also did a residual dry matter survey, a soil compaction survey, and some other cattle pasture surveys, just to get an idea of where the pastures are at currently before we bring cattle onto the land. But species composition was the most difficult and the most enjoyable, I think, of any of those surveys. And that's basically just looking at all the different plants that are there now so we can monitor the changes. And you can see we have one of our other really dedicated volunteers, Joe Neary, who helped out with this survey this year. And these are just a few of the beautiful plants that I got to hang out with in the field for a couple of weeks this year during that survey. And last, but probably the most loved and important project in my heart and soul to me was the HREC land stewardship work plans that I helped draft this year. And this actually wasn't on my list of capacity building goals when I got to the site at the beginning of the year, but it definitely fits in to several of them. And it fits in really well with HREC strategic goals, with our carbon farm plan. And in so many ways, it makes perfect sense that we would start making action-oriented plans and site-specific plans to help with invasive species, to help with oak regeneration, to implement our prescribed burn plan, and to do these all in a really synergized way that achieves multiple goals at the same time. And we started this project this year with a couple of our climate stewards graduates actually who took one of the work sites on as their capstone project to achieve their certification. So on the right side, you can see I'm standing with Emily Tecchio and Jessica Beckstrom, who both helped with caging some oak trees in an area on the site where there was a lot of first-year regeneration, but not very many second or older saplings existing there. And so something I didn't know before I got to the site was that oaks are having a hard time regenerating in California. And there's several reasons for that. Drought has been a factor on some plants, and invasive species are also a huge pressure on oak trees. But one of the things that we can really help is that deer love to browse on baby oak trees, and so caging the oak trees can help them survive a lot more than if they were just out there with no cage around them for the first couple of years. So you can see that we put some cages out, we map the locations of them, and then on the bottom left-hand side, Jessica's helping remove a cage from a tree that is a survivor. He made it up to maturity. And if we leave the cage on him, he'll get girdled by his cage and die. So it's important that we map the locations of the cages we put out and go and check on them and see which cage design was best, which one survived, which didn't. And so we're taking some data on that kind of thing and just trying to support oak regeneration on the site. And here's a photo that I took when I was doing a field day with our botanist, Carrie Heisey. And he actually lived and worked on the site for 12 years, and he continues to work on the site, mostly as a volunteer pro bono botanist. And it was really awesome to be able to spend so much time in the field with him this year and learn plant ID from him and record a lot of his knowledge and wisdom in our online mapping system. But I just thought this would be a beautiful resting place to talk about how grateful I am that I got to spend this year and last year at HREC. It's been a really beautiful place to rest and to learn, to grow professionally and personally, and also just to, connect deeper to this ecosystem that I wouldn't otherwise have had a chance to get to know. And there's been so many people who've been a part of this experience for me, and obviously the entire HREC staff, but also all of the advisors that I've had the chance to work with: Mike Jones, Jen Riddell, Carrie Heisey, and so many others, Chuck Bond, thanks to Hannah Bird and John Bailey and all my supervisors. Really appreciate everything they've done for me and their continued support in my next chapter. And here we have a newt that we found at HREC. Katie and I, at one night, happened upon an entire newt migration. There were literally over 100, I counted, of these newts crossing the road, and we stood out on the road and watched them for I don't even know how long. But I thought he would be a beautiful character to stare at you as you think, if you have any questions for me. Feel free to just unmute if you do.
Thank you so much, Mona. Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself, raise your hand if you have questions, or just put any questions in the chat.